Good morning, friends. On this 16th day of August, I am Mary Jean Taylor and happily welcome you to our North Chapel virtual Sunday service. You may have read that Kate Braystrup was scheduled to share a reflection with us today. Well, in one of her roles, Kate serves as chaplain to the Maine's Warden Service, and an emergency has called her away. So we will enjoy her wisdom and experience another Sunday. Luckily, Leon has left vacation mode to share his rested and relaxed thoughts with all of us. May I just say it? I miss you. I miss your face. I miss your hug. I miss Diane and the voices of the choir. I miss the grace of the in-person Leon, our beautiful North Chapel space, and just our being there together in community. But I also know that because you are here now, we have once again found a way to be together at this place and time, which, just like when we are gathered in the North Chapel, is made sacred by your presence. Thank you for being here. Our world continues to be shaped by a force beyond our control. And while many of us feel like we have too many meetings and air hugs via the computer screen, might I encourage you to log on once again to make sure you read this week's In Touch that may still be resting in your inbox. Even in a muddled world, there continues to be events happening that may make your week better. For example, did you know there is a 7 p.m. Vesper service on the church's back lawn this Tuesday? Or that you can order fall bulbs for your garden, and the church will keep 50% of the funds raised from what you spend? Take a look. Perhaps you will find something that will bring you joy. I hope so. I will leave you with these words by Lynn Unger from the UU World magazine. Perhaps you've already read the piece. Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray. Touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart. Reach out your words, reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. Welcome in, one and all. Let's sing, shall we? Our first hymn is Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky.
Hello, my name is Laura Foley, and today I'd like to read you a poem by Barbara Crooker from the collection Healing the Divide, and the poem is called Listen. Listen, I want to tell you something. This morning is bright after all the steady rain, and every iris, peony, rose opens its mouth, rejoicing. I want to say, wake up, open your eyes. There's a snow-covered road ahead, a field of blankness, a sheet of paper, an empty screen. Even the smallest insects are singing, vibrating their entire bodies, tiny violins of longing and desire. We were made for song. I can't tell you what prayer is, but I can take the breath of the meadow into my mouth, and I can release it for the leaves' green need. I want to tell you your life is a blue coal, a slice of orange in the mouth, cut hay in the nostrils. The cardinal's red song dances in your blood. Look, every month the moon blossoms into a peony, then shrinks to a sliver of garlic, and then it blooms again. Thank you.
When I listen to the wind, I hear the voices of old friends, the deep maple song, the whisper of birches, and above all, the lament of tall white pines creaking like landlocked masts, dreaming of the sea.
When I see the sun set, I'm reminded that all things will pass, that change is the only constant, and that my presence is my only path to love.
An excerpt from a poem. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in the midst of other woe than ours. A friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That's all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. An English romantic artist named John Keats wrote these words in a poem called Ode to a Grecian Urn, 1819. The poetry prompts a question: what measure of beauty do we find within ourselves? An excerpt from a song. Love conquers poses. Love smashes stances. Love crushes angles into black. I always wanted to be matched with her, yet her beauty was so different to mine. My beauty needs an understanding and a knowledge of what I am, but hers is enough, earned through eons, for that is what true beauty is, time's gift to perfect humility. An artist named Pete Townsend wrote these words for a beautiful woman in a song called Stop Hurting People in 1982. Once again, the poetry prompts a question: what measure of beauty do we find within ourselves? What magnitude of beauty? What echo of it? What refraction? Beauty. Beauty is so important. The deep beauty to which we all have equal access. We don't possess such a beauty. We cannot hold it. We do not own it. No one of us does. But we do, however, have access to it. No one person more or less than the next. Beauty shines down, rains down like water, rains down like the soul's first best sovereignty. Beauty is the means through which we might have access to that which is larger than ourselves. In the poetry of John Keats, of Pete Townsend, true beauty is a kind of humble gift. In the ordination sermon that she delivered in 2012, Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, one of the leading theologians in Unitarian Universalism, said so much of beauty. She said that ministry of the artist is to draw us to the sacred within ourselves and in the world by awakening in us the rhythm and feel, the melody and the harmony, the intensity and the sweetness, the soft hard, the sweet bitter, the dissonant dissolved jazz of life, the beauty of God. The music of that beauty, St. Augustine and other mystics have taught, is always sounding. It is always with us. The question is, are we with it? So how do you get with beauty? How do you get with the beauty that is all around us? Dr. Parker continued, she said, at the end of his essay, The Fire Next Time, after exposing the dynamics of racism, the ways humanity is beaten down and torn apart by the devastating exploitations of racial injustice, James Baldwin says, quote, "The question remains, what shall we do with all of this beauty?" It's striking. James Baldwin wrote The Fire Next Time in 1963. Pete Townsend wrote Stop Hurting People in 1982. John Keats wrote Ode to a Grecian Urn in 1819. And we now are writing the poetry of life in the here and now in 2020. For 200 years, we have struggled with the question, and you know the question just as I do, just as Baldwin did. What shall we do with all of this beauty? Most humbly, I submit that we shall nurture it. I submit that we should quench its thirst. For some of us, beauty is understood as the symbol of divine perfection. Beauty of the stars, the beauty of the planets in the night sky, the beauty of the settings and the risings of the sun, the beauty of the flowing rivers, like the one that is behind me or just to my left, the Aracuichi. All of these are symbols, or can be symbols, of that which is larger than us. In his book entitled The Sense of Beauty, George Santayana explores this point. He takes a shot at defining beauty. It's very difficult to do, but he says, it would be easy to find a definition of beauty that should give in a few words a telling paraphrase of the word. We know, on excellent authority, that beauty is truth. That It is the expression of the ideal, the symbol of the divine, and the sensible manifestation of the good. End quote. This definition can mean so many things, really. That's the bad news. The good news is that this definition can mean so many things. Really. Beauty means so many things to an artist named Georgia O'Keeffe. One can spend lifetimes in an effort to contain what that one woman meant by beauty. Her sense of beauty was elusive. It was hard to catch. Her so-called critics did not understand her, could not capture her well enough. I still think about what she said when she reflected on a painting that she completed in 1941. The painting was called An Orchid. I have a picture of it in this book. I'm just going to see if I can find it quickly here and show it to you. So that's the painting. And of this painting, she said, well, I made you take the time to look. I made you take the time to look at what I saw. And when you took the time to really notice my flower, you hung all of your associations with flowers on my flower. And you write about my flower as if I see it the way you see it, as if I see and think the way you see and think, and I don't. Georgia O'Keeffe's sense of beauty was elusive. It's disquieting. It's disquieting when we are forced to come to terms with the fact that we don't always understand one another well. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we clash. Sometimes we really don't understand each other, especially when we don't step deeply into ourselves. What we really need to do is better understand ourselves. And sometimes that's a rarity. That takes time. That takes effort. So then how do we give ourselves the time that we need to understand ourselves? There's an old song that I really love. And the center of it goes, if I had stopped to listen once or twice, if I had closed my mouth and opened my eyes, if I had cooled my head and warmed my heart, I'd not be on this lonesome road tonight. But I carry on. Never mind feeling sorry for yourself. It doesn't save you from your troubled mind. So walk down that lonesome road all by yourself, and don't turn your head over your shoulder. And only stop to rest yourself when the silver moon is shining high above the trees. Sometimes truly understanding ourselves and truly understanding one another is just one step away on that lonesome road. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's farther away. Sometimes it takes much more effort. Sometimes it's much farther or even unimaginable. But all of these journeys begin with a single step. Take the step. Change in our lives is just that one step away. Life feels so much different when we're on the road. About 30 years ago, I led a workshop on Star Island. It was a youth conference, and I was lucky enough to be a leader of a workshop. The subject of the workshop was intentionally nebulous and ill-defined. Its purpose was to provide the workshop participants with the opportunity to explore themselves and one another. The ambiguity of the subject meant that only the courageous and the brazen and the daring were going to step into the unknown, which is what the workshop was actually about. We were charged to explore ourselves. We stepped into our own unknowns, but when we did this before, we stepped into the unknowns of one another. So we did this exercise with clay. It's really interesting. We met for a series of 6 days in the morning for 2 hours. And sometime in the middle of the week, I can't remember exactly when, I asked them to come in the next day. Come in tomorrow, I said, and bring a blindfold with you and wear clothes that you're comfortable in, casual clothes that can get a little bit dirty. Okay. So they arrived the next morning. I had music softly playing in the background. I asked them to put their blindfolds on, and then the exercise began. Again, intentionally nebulous and ill-defined. We were going into the unknown. I rattled a piece of newspaper in front of them, placed it in their hands, and had them place that paper right in front of them as they sat on the floor. I then took about a 1 pound, 1.5 pound ball of clay and thwapped it on the ground. Thwap, so it made a big sound. It's kind of startling. Well, the first time, and the other 15 times it wasn't so startling. But we thwapped the clay down, and I placed their hands on the clay so they could feel it. And then I told them that for the next 45 minutes there would be no further instructions, save the act of reaching out for water. I had them outstretch their hands to ask for water, which was placed in the very palms of their hands so that they could more easily work the clay that was in their possession. That was the only step, which was hard for this group of leaders that were not accustomed to asking for what they need. So after about 45 minutes, I asked them to bring their processes to a close, and I asked them to remove their blindfolds and to look only at their own work, and to look at their work only non-judgmentally and only lovingly, only compassionately. Doesn't mean you have to like what you made. It just means that you have to accept it unconditionally. I asked them to settle in with what they had created. Then we left the workshop location, and we walked across the island to the big front lawn, and we sat in a circle on the grass. And then we were given instructions. I asked everyone to take their creation and walk it around and present it to people in the circle, one by one by one by one. Okay, and then to place their creation back where they had been sitting and go out into the middle of the circle and embody what it was that they had created, sort of assume the shape of their creation with their bodies. And as the person was going around, each person viewing this creation would think about how they would shape their body in the shape of that creation. So then after they would go out into the middle of the circle and assume the shape of their creation, and then they would stop, and then everyone in the circle would assume what they perceived. So it was a great way to see yourself reflected and refracted in the eyes of all of the workshop participants. Then the last step was to take the clay and to put it on the altar, which was this sort of like, it was basically my sweater on the floor, my sweatshirt on the floor, and you put it on the sweatshirt, and everyone was instructed to put their creation in contact with at least one of the other structures that were made. So we went around and went around and went around. It was very beautiful. Someone made a tree. Someone made a bowl. Someone broke their clay into hundreds of different pieces. So we all just kind of fell out on the ground. And one of the workshop participants created a face with an open mouth and hair streaming straight back, as if some great shockwave had come over her. And I was frankly a little bit worried about what was going on in the mind of this one workshop participant. And so she showed her clay creation to the rest of the group. And then she assumed its shape. We were all thinking, "Wah!" That we saw someone going down a roller coaster or having been hit by a tornado. But her expression was much more beautiful and much more serene. She got out and she shook her hair back and she looked at the sun and said, "Ah." It was so funny how it's possible to misperceive one another, even people that you know and know well. What do you think the most valuable parts of that exercise were? When we reflected as a group of leaders, young leaders, on the part of that exercise that was most beautiful, most difficult, actually, It was the act of reaching out for help. It was made easier by the fact that we didn't have to say anything. We didn't have to say, "Excuse me, can I get some help?" And we were blindfolded, so no one in the circle ever knew who else was outstretching their hands and reaching out for help. That made it easier. Something about the anonymity of it, something about the privacy of that request made it easier. But as a group, we processed it. How do we turn to one another? How is it that we can ask for help? It's interesting, in these last few days in this COVID crisis time, we've had a group of leaders. A few weeks ago, I lit candles for all of the phone tree people and for the people who've been called, and the candles burned behind me during the service. One of the things we realized, though, in the process was that the weight of trying to call everyone in the congregation was great, and we needed to shift that energy in a way. We needed to move from the act of receiving that call and those checkings in for health and well-being, and shift that responsibility over to us now, so that it becomes our responsibility to reach out a little bit, as if for a little bit of water, as if for a little bit of help. Now, I've attempted to do this clay exercise many different times and try to replicate sort of the magic that we created on Star Island 20, 30 years ago, and I've never been able to do it. Something died in the process. Something didn't quite make it through into a repeatable form. But that doesn't mean that what happened wasn't beautiful. Beauty makes sense against great loss sometimes, against irretrievable experience, against once-in-a-lifetime experiences, times when we touch something so rare and so beautiful that we know that we may never see it again. It's okay to let those things go. It happens all the time. Every single day is a day that will never come again. Our wealth and our health are described by the degree to which we can let that happen and expect it to come again tomorrow, this beautiful miracle of life. And sometimes it doesn't. And that's what brings us in touch with that which is beautiful and unmistakably precious in the world. As we think about that which makes life beautiful, that which makes life precious, may we nurture that dryness inside of ourselves, inside of our own experiences, soul level deep. May we find ways to reach out for the help, for the nourishment that we need. May we find a way to quench a spiritual thirst within us, to know ourselves well, and to know one another well, so that when we meet well and face to face, in good confidence and in good compassion. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
See, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see. See, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see, I long to see, see, I long to see. 'Tis long years since last I've seen you. To your rolling river. 'Tis long years since last I've seen you. Away, we're bound away across the Missouri. See, I long to see. 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 Oh, see, I long to see. See, I long to see. See, I long to see. Shenandoah, I long to see. I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. Oh, see, I long to see. I long to see. See, I long to see. Oh, see, I long to see. See, I long to see.